You think you chose how you love people. You didn't. Somewhere between the ages of 0 and 7, before you could tie your own shoes, your brain was already building a working model of what love looks like, what safety feels like, and what happens when you need someone and they don't show up. You didn't design that model. You absorbed it, and you've been running it on autopilot ever since. Let's go back to Aid. Aid's father grew up in a house run by a school teacher, a man who measured love in report cards and corrected sentences, who believed that discipline was the highest form of care he had to offer. So when Aid's father became a father himself, he did what most people do without realizing it. He repeated the operating system he was handed: structure, high expectations, very little warmth expressed out loud, because warmth had never been modeled to him as something a man does out loud. Aid's mother grew up differently. Raised largely by a widow who was too busy surviving to be consistent, she learned that love could disappear without warning. One day there was a tension. The next day there wasn't, because there was a crisis to manage, a debt to settle, a meal to stretch across 6 mouths instead of 5. So Aid's mother grew into an adult who loved fiercely, but unpredictably, warm one moment, distant and overwhelmed the next. Put those two people in a house together, raising a child, and you don't just get parenting. You get a very specific psychological climate, and climates shape everything that grows inside them. In the 1960s, a developmental psychologist named Diana Baumrin sat and watched dozens of families interact, and out of that observation, she identified 4 distinct parenting styles that still shape how psychologists talk about childhood today. Authoritative parents set high expectations, but pair them with warmth and explanation. Authoritarian parents set the same high expectations, but strip out the warmth. Obedience matters more than understanding. Permissive parents flood a child with warmth, but offer almost no structure. And neglectful parents offer neither warmth nor structure at all, leaving a child to essentially raise the emotional half of themselves. Aid's household was a blend nobody would put in a textbook, but most real households are. Authoritarian structure from his father, inconsistent warmth from his mother. 2 different climates, layered on top of each other, every single day of his childhood. Here's what almost nobody tells you about parenting styles. The style itself matters less than the child's nervous system's best guess about how to survive it. And that guess has a name. Psychologists call it attachment. In the 1950s, a British psychiatrist named John Bowlby proposed something radical for his time: that a child's bond with their caregiver wasn't just emotional comfort, it was a biological survival strategy. A child who could reliably predict their caregiver's response had a working map for safety. A child who couldn't was left building a map with missing roads. A few years later, a researcher named Mary Ainsworth took that idea into a lab and built something called the strange situation. A simple experiment where a toddler is briefly separated from their parent, then reunited, while researchers watch exactly how the child responds. What she found sorted children into patterns that have held up for over half a century of research. Securely attached children were distressed when the parent left, but comforted quickly when they returned because their nervous system trusted the reunion. Anxiously attached children stayed distressed even after reunion, clinging, unsure the safety would last. Avoidantly attached children barely reacted at all, not because they didn't care, but because some part of them had already learned that needing comfort rarely got rewarded, so why show it? Which one do you think Aid became? Picture him at 4 years old, upset after a fall, running toward his mother. Some days she scoops him up instantly, all warmth, all attention. Other days she's distracted, overwhelmed, short with him, not out of cruelty, but exhaustion. His nervous system doesn't get to file that under "she's tired." It only gets to file it under "I don't know what I'll get when I need her." Multiply that by 10,000 small moments across a childhood, and you don't get a personality quirk. You get a template. By the time A-Day was an adult, that template didn't disappear. It just changed clothes. The child who wasn't sure if comfort was coming became the adult who checks his phone 11 times after sending a text that hasn't been answered yet. The child who learned that love was structured but distant became the man who feels vaguely suspicious of partners who are too consistently warm, too easily affectionate, because his nervous system was never calibrated to trust that particular climate. This is what we mean by emotional retention. You don't remember most of your early childhood in pictures. You remember it in reflexes. Quick pause. If you've made it this far, that tells me something in this is landing for you. Do me a favor and hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps this series reach the people who need to hear it. All right, let's keep going. There's a reason this goes deeper than just watching your parents too. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Albert Bandura ran an experiment that's since become one of the most cited studies in psychology, the Bobo doll experiment. Children watched an adult behave aggressively toward an inflatable doll, and afterward, left alone with the same doll, the children copied the exact behavior they'd witnessed, often down to the specific words the adult had used. Bandura called this social learning, the idea that humans don't need to be punished or rewarded to learn a behavior. They just need to watch someone else do it first. Children aren't just shaped by how their parents treat them. They're shaped by how their parents treat everyone. How your father spoke to your mother when he thought you weren't listening. How your mother handled being disrespected by a stranger. How conflict got resolved or didn't in the next room while you were supposedly asleep. None of that required a single word directed at you. You were still taking notes. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Ade's father never once told him, "Control your emotions, they're a weakness." He didn't have to. Ade watched his father go quiet and cold every time something upset him, watched an entire household hold its breath until the mood passed, and by age 8, Ade had already learned the lesson without a single lecture. Emotions are dangerous, and the safest thing to do with them is bury them until they leak out somewhere else. That's the part people miss when they say, "But my parents never actually said that to me." They didn't have to say it. You watched it. And watching is how children learn almost everything that actually sticks. So what happens when that 8-year-old becomes a 28-year-old? He becomes someone who struggles to name what he's feeling in real time, because naming feelings was never modeled as a safe thing to do out loud. He becomes someone who either shuts down during conflict, mirroring his father, or someone who overcorrects so hard against his father's coldness that he becomes anxious and overly accommodating instead, terrified of ever making someone feel the way his mother's inconsistency made him feel. Both are the same wound. They just wear opposite costumes. And this is precisely why two siblings, raised in the same house by the same parents, can grow into wildly different adults. They weren't actually raised in the same house. Birth order changed what each child witnessed. Parental exhaustion by the third child looked nothing like parental anxiety with the first. Each child got a slightly different climate, absorbed a slightly different set of reflexes, and built a slightly different internal model of love, safety, and conflict, all inside the same four walls. None of this means your parents were villains. Ade's father wasn't cold because he didn't love his son. He was cold because coldness was the only language of love he'd ever been fluent in, handed down from a teacher father who believed affection and discipline couldn't coexist. Ade's mother wasn't inconsistent because she didn't care. She was inconsistent because she was drowning in a version of survival nobody trained her for, doing more with less than most people will ever be asked to do. But understanding why the walls of your internal house went up a certain way doesn't mean you have to keep living inside them exactly as they were built. It just means you finally know which walls are load-bearing and which ones were only ever standing out of habit. Here's the part worth sitting with. Attachment styles, like the epigenetic markers we talked about earlier in this series, are not life sentences. Decades of research since Ainsworth's original work has shown something psychologists now call earned security, the ability to move towards secure attachment in adulthood, not by rewriting childhood, but by consciously building new relationships, new patterns, new evidence that safety can be reliable after all. It's slower than anyone wants it to be, but it is, according to the data, entirely possible. So the next time you catch yourself pulling away from someone who's being kind to you, or spiraling because a message went unanswered for an hour, don't just call it you being dramatic or you being difficult. Ask a better question. Whose voice built that reflex? Whose silence taught you to expect silence? Whose love taught you that love was something you had to earn or brace for or manage instead of simply receive? You didn't choose how you love people, but you can choose slowly and on purpose to learn a new way. If this changed how you see your own childhood or your own parents, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which pattern you recognize in yourself. It helps more than you know. We've looked underground at your foundation and now at the people who built directly on top of it. But there's a third force neither of them could fully control, and it presses down on every household regardless of how much love was in it. In part 3, we step outside the house completely into money, class, and the economic pressure that shapes a childhood, whether anyone in it wanted it to or not. That's next.